Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
I think a lot of people are having a problem with this Jimmy Kimmel thing. I'd like to put it to rest today. Let's go ahead and, with great finality, say, this is it. I'm not going to deal with this crap anymore. But after I posted some things and some people posted and hit me back and tagged me, I'm like, okay, in case you missed the show last night, I'm going to go into great detail why we need to move on. We have to move on from here. And I thought a perfect place to start, because all of this, the Colbert, the Jimmy Kimmel, all of this has exposed one of two things. It has either exposed people not understanding the First Amendment or just relying on other people not understanding the First Amendment. So we're going to take a few minutes here and we're going to go into detail what the First Amendment does and doesn't do. And then you can take from this show what you want. You can tell your friends and everybody else. I had posted something, where is it? Yeah, right here. I had posted this. And I said, can we please stop talking about Jimmy Kimmel? It's done. It's over. Mission accomplished. Instead of talking about him, let's focus on who is next. I'm going to come back to that post. But what I was saying right there was those people who don't understand the First Amendment and what it can and can't do and what people can and can't do with it, this is where we need to move on and focus indeed on who's next. So before I get into too far with that, I want to show you what somebody, and they posted this. His handle is, "You're wrong." Okay. Barry, people like Kamala want censorship. Now you are asking for the same thing. Who is to say you aren't next? The Jabademic showed how quickly some Americans gave up their rights, and we have to look at the big picture, and we are getting played. Much respect. And my response was, now you're asking for the same thing. Please do explain the details of your fallacious statement. And You're Wrong came back and said, when you said let's focus on who's next, that is what you said. I'm just saying when the left gets into power, you could be next. It's about our First Amendment. We have to be careful what we are allowing our government to do with our rights. Understand that statement. We have to be careful for what we allow the government to do with our rights. See, he's partly right and partly wrong there. And perhaps some, you should perform some due diligence on the First Amendment. It is clearly in order. And so all of this brought me to thinking about the movie Cool Hand Luke. Not sure if you've ever seen it. Cool Hand Luke is with Paul Newman. He goes to jail, and there's a really egregious warden who gives him a hard time. And in one of the scenes, he's beating down Paul Newman and making him do all kinds of stuff. And he tells the other inmates, and you've probably seen this famous scene, which I can't play here because of copyright restrictions. Remember that. Remember that term. But he says, what we have here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach. I feel right now the First Amendment conversation that's going on right now, there's a lot of people who are either being intentionally ignorant or really don't know what it means. You see, you can't reach some of these people. They are off in a tizzy right now, on the left and the right, because they don't understand or choose not to understand a very simple premise. Let me show you this very simple premise in case you personally are not aware of it. This is what the First Amendment says. It protects the freedoms of religion, freedom of speech, the freedom of press, the freedom of assembly, and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. And that next three words explains everything. From government interference. From government interference. Down further, it gets spelled out here: freedom of religion, freedom of speech protects the right to express oneself freely without government restriction. For some reason, many people on the left and many people on the right don't remember those three words. They're very distinct. It's not hard to understand what the First Amendment says. People are either choosing or they don't understand it. Some men you just can't reach. We have a failure to communicate. So allow me to communicate. When the gentleman said to me, and he wrote right here, as you can see, he goes, "This is what you said. I'm just saying when the left gets into power, you could be next. It's about our First Amendment. We have to be careful what we are allowing our government to do." By saying that, that gentleman is saying that the government removed Jimmy Kimmel. The government removed Stephen Colbert. The government could shut me down in the future. None of which are true. So if we can't expect people on the right to understand what the First Amendment means, how can we, as good stewards of the Constitution, expect people on the left to understand? They're going to be lied to by the media. They're going to be lied to by all of the people in the Democrat government. At least I would hope the people on the right would buck up and say, okay, let me explain to you the First Amendment. You see, I am not being put in any position where the federal government can do anything about what I do. I happen to be essentially hanging out in somebody else's house talking. And that somebody else isn't the federal government. I am broadcasting right now on X, Rumble, and YouTube. None of which are the federal government, and none of which do I own. So at any point, X could say, you're not allowed to do this. It does not infringe on my freedom of speech. It's their platform. Rumble could say, you know what, it's been nice, go away. That's not infringing on my free speech. These people here, the same thing. It's not infringing upon my free speech. You have to understand what happened with Colbert was not government, and it wasn't his free speech. He sat and he did his show every night in front of an audience on somebody else's platform. He was essentially borrowing space and saying what he wanted on somebody else's land. And he got the eviction notice. And you've got people on the right and left out there, oh, it's a free speech issue. No, it's not. Not at all. Unless the government owns NBC or ABC or Disney. Nope. Nope. And nope. It's a private company. We are all under the auspices of understanding what a private company can and can't do. You can't go into Target and decide you want to play a guitar at 10. Nope, you can't do it here. It's my free speech. I want to sing. Nope, get out. Hurt you? Bother you? That's because you can't be reached. Some men you can't reach. They don't want to know the truth. The gentleman mentioned, doing things on YouTube, and there's something called copyright. Copyright is a law. And that law says if you didn't do this, then you can't do that unless you get permission to do that. Almost every musical artist in the world, including Christian music, will not let you just take their music and do what you want with it. So what you're complaining about is the law. It's a misunderstanding of the law. It is a wrongful application of the law. You see, Jimmy Kimmel could today open up a YouTube channel and go free enterprise and do what he wants. It's not under the auspices of the federal government. And Barry, you may say, well, how is the federal government involved? All right, let me explain that. Everybody, and I kind of told you guys last night, you have a license. A broadcast network has a license to broadcast shows. It is a privilege. You have to work under the guidance of that privilege. You don't have a right to be on NBC. I can't walk into NBC tomorrow and say, hey, you need to call, make sure you cover Fanfare. Nope, you don't have a right. Now, what you don't realize, let me rephrase that. What some of you may not realize is that this is what you voted for. When I see people on the right complaining, and there are some out there, you don't understand this is what you voted for. Well, Barry, I didn't know this was going to happen. Yeah, you did. You see, President Trump, and I broadcast every single rally. Not one, not two, every single rally. And his main thing he said is he wanted to put the power from the government into the people. Not in Washington, D.C., but into Provo, Utah, into Charleston, South Carolina, into Boca Raton, Florida, not Washington, D.C. So what happened with Jimmy Kimmel is Brendan Carr did just that. It is his job to say, we're not the ones who should be controlling things. It should be controlled locally, which is what we voted for. And then the local affiliates, because that's who holds the license. They're the ones who are actually broadcasting the show. I bet you a lot of you didn't know that. You thought it was on NBC. NBC is the network that distributes. The people who broadcast it are the individual channels throughout the country. Think I'm wrong? Go drive by your local television station. You'll see the big satellite dish. That big satellite dish was because they were getting the signal for the Jimmy Kimmel Show to be broadcast from their station. When you're listening to Sirius and you're listening to the radio, it's because somebody has a satellite. They're bringing it in. The big network is distributing it. And then the local affiliate broadcast it. They're the ones with the license. So if we're believing in local government and local rules and local rights, the local stations said, nah, we don't want this. 32 or 33 with, I think it was Nexstar, and then Sinclair had a bunch of other ones were like, we don't want this. Get rid of it. And he was done. It literally is, that's how it works. They're making a martyr out of Colbert. They're making a martyr out of, what's his name? I already forgot him. Jimmy Kimmel. But what they're not showing you is, I don't care if there's 1,000 people at one of these protests. It doesn't matter. Here's why it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to try and get too far in the weeds here to let you know, but as these shows are broadcast, every single one of these stations has what's called a program director. The program director says this and says that and says this. We're going to show this, we're not going to show that. Jimmy Kimmel broadcast on television 4%, maybe 5% of NBC's entire 24-hour program. The program director, wherever they are, whatever city they are, they're like, we'll take this show, we'll show this show, we'll show this show. The fact of the matter here is he wasn't generating enough revenue. He was getting less than 150,000 people to watch his doggone show. I get videos sometimes almost that or more. And so at that point, he became financially a liability. I don't care what his content is. This is a business. It has nothing to do with the First Amendment. That's what bothers a lot of people. They don't realize it's a business. I want to play a quick post video from you. This is 51 seconds. This is the head of CBS. I think her name is Sherry. Sherry Redstone? Used to be Summer Redstone's wife. She is now in control of CBS. Listen specifically to what she says happened with Colbert, because this is the kind of thing people will never ever hear or don't want to hear.
Outside of the settlement, there were other actions taken to ensure there would be regulatory approval. I think about rollbacks of DEI policies. I think about some things like the cancellation of Steve Colbert's show, that was never explicitly stated as being part of getting regulatory approval, but it's something that I think a lot of people assumed. Do you think that they made the right choices to ensure that they got the regulatory approval?
I'm not going to tie any of that to regulatory approval. I can tell you that we had been looking at late night. It was financially not viable. It had been that way for a long time. We had made a decision months prior to the announcement that we were not going to be going forward with that show. I love Stephen. He does a great job, but we really needed to be in a financially viable business, and you saw we did that with James Corden as well.
There's your answer. Y'all can all scream all day about First Amendment. The bottom line, you weren't making me any money. And because you aren't making me any money, you gotta go. Some of the biggest shows in history, people have loved them. Hey, they weren't renewed? No, they're not renewed. It wasn't making any money. It's that simple. That is pure capitalism. What you're watching is the underpinnings of communism when people are complaining about Kimmel and Colbert. If you loved them so much, why didn't you watch? If you loved them so much, why didn't you buy products from the advertisers? When Miss Redstone would look in the morning and go, how many people watched? Okay, what was our advertising revenue? What was our production cost? That doesn't look good. Jimmy, what are we doing here? We're paying you all this money. We're paying all these production costs, and it's in the red. You got to pick it up, do something. And both he and Colbert wouldn't do it. So now, Jimmy, you're going to be in free enterprise. You're going to have to do the same thing we're doing. You're going to have to go to cable. You're going to have to go to digital, whatever. And now you're going to have to compete. You no longer get the check just because you're Jimmy Kimmel. You don't get to just decide, you know what, I'm Jimmy Kimmel. I want $8 million a year. Now you got to go out and make it. Now you actually got to get out there and do it. I've seen so many of these people who were big names on the network finding out they're falling on their face trying to do it themselves. Katie Couric, Jim Acosta. I mean, you could go through the ghost of network Democrats and realize, oh, I don't even know where they are anymore. Don Lemon is hustling. His show is dying, but he's getting more views now because he realized he's got to hustle. Joy Reid, done. Nobody wants to hear your shit. Excuse me, I almost said the word. Nobody wants to hear that crap. So now you understand exactly what went on with Kimmel and why I said it's time to move on. I want to make this the last time we speak about Jimmy Kimmel. And yes, there is somebody next. And am I worried about government shuttering me? Nope. Why? Because I'm already under the auspices of somebody else. There's no telling what day I go on and click a button and Rumble says, sorry, your privileges have been revoked. It could be that easy. And that's what you guys some of you aren't understanding. It's all about money. I think a lot of people don't get it, that it's a business. A business. They don't put up, otherwise it would be PBS. Maybe Jimmy can go there, go to PBS and see if they can raise money without having government cash. They're a free enterprise right now. They can broadcast whatever they want. They're on cable. I don't know. Give it a shot. See what happens. But stop saying that the government did it. If Biden was in there tomorrow, the only way that they could do it is if they do it backdoor like they did it with X. But eventually, X was the one, or rather back then it was Twitter. Twitter was doing it because they were afraid. Zuckerberg was doing it because they were afraid. And now they're letting everybody know. But your First Amendment is a very limited right. And that's the one thing people have to understand. It's extremely limited. The only people who can't legally or illegally restrain your ability to speak is the federal government. Everybody else can. And like I said last night, you want to prove it? Walk into somebody's house and tell them their house looks like shit. Your dog stinks in here. They're going to tell you hit the road. It's going to be that simple. Then you're going to realize you had the ability to speak. Unfortunately, they had the ability to react. So let's not talk about the First Amendment being infringed ever again unless you see the federal government doing it. You want to talk about the ultimate in First Amendment suppression? Putting a bullet in somebody. That's some serious First Amendment stuff. It wasn't the government as far as we know. But still, everybody is saying on the left is getting right behind Jimmy Kimmel. You're going to see Jimmy. But they loathe, they hate what Charlie Kirk stand for. So when I look at the lay of the land here, I have to wonder, how are we ever going to come together when we can't even commemorate somebody who was assassinated? If we can't even look at somebody's life, and I don't care if they're on the left, if we can't say this was wrong, this should never have happened. We need to show America that we are unanimous. We are completely behind letting everybody know this can't stand, and we're going to honor this guy for doing nothing but having a discussion. It's pretty bad. But now it gets worse.
Speech protections in the world. The First Amendment here is much more rigorous than the protections accorded the average British citizen. That does not excuse Jimmy Kimmel's idiocy on Monday night. And ABC is a private company, and unlike you and I right now, they operate in a regulated world on a broadcast network using the public spectrum. So they have an even higher obligation to the public. But I think what ABC was anticipating is they're going to lose half to three-quarters of their audience, and the advertisers are going to flee because Kimmel simply lied about Charlie's murderer. Charlie was...
All right, so I'm setting up this next piece, but I want you to understand what he just said. And that's why when you see the people in Congress and you see the protests and all that, how minimal it is. When you go back and think ABC, Disney, is broadcast across the entire country. 24 hours a day, ABC, NBC, these networks are broadcasting. They're broadcasting in Charleston, South Carolina, like I said. They're broadcasting in the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina. They're broadcasting in every corner of the country. They have access to these shows. When you have that kind of access, you're telling me this one show that represented, that's on 1 hour a night out of a 24-hour day cycle, they're supposed to, I don't know, put all these other shows in peril? Think about this for a second. I don't have, neither do you have any first right refusal over a network. But we can choose to do this and not watch. And so were they going to sacrifice the other 23 hours per day of some shows and people just decide, you know what? We're not going to watch ABC. Screw you. That's what you're putting on? We don't want any part of you. And now it's going to affect the revenue for the rest of the 23-hour period. I worked in broadcasting, as many of you guys know, as a concert promoter. I know the inner workings of how network and advertising influences what these big companies think. You know, sometimes people put up in the post here, Barry, you're running too many ads. It's the business. And I don't know why people get upset about talking about money, why they get upset about talking about how revenue is driven. These things all cost money. I am not doing this as a nonprofit. I'm not an NGO. This is a business. And ABC, CBS, Disney, all of them, they are businesses. And so if you've got a spur that's in your heel that's causing the rest of you not to be able to walk right, you want to remove that spur. Now here's something you don't know maybe. Jimmy Kimmel had the opportunity to stay. Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, ABC, the CEO got a hold of Jimmy Kimmel. Said, let's fix this right now. Go on the air and apologize. Truth. Go on the air and tell people you're sorry for what you said and that you're not going to do this kind of stuff again, and then just go on with your show. Go on making your millions. Go on doing a show that nobody's going to watch anyway. We'll even give that to you. Just apologize. It doesn't cost you a dime. And that's when you realize, after you've just heard it now, that the propaganda and the machine on the left, it takes no prisoners. You cannot go against the family, per se, using a mafia term. All he had to do was go on and say, you know what? I made a mistake. I made a mistake, and I shouldn't have said what I've said. Okay, so let's go on to my next guest. And that would have been it. It would have been like 30 seconds, 60 seconds out of his entire show. I was wrong. The Democrats can't even muster up the honesty and integrity to look at a camera and say, I was wrong. Instead, I'm gonna be cast away with my $4 or $5 million a year salary just because I can't go against the party. I can't look to them like I caved. I need you to fire me, because that looks well to the Democrats and the Libnuts. Oh, they'll protest, yeah. But if he caved, he'd have no place to go. Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, and I used to work at Disney, full disclosure, asked him, just apologize and we'll be good. So you can take that for wherever you want in terms of now understanding this guy's a real controlled piece of crap. I don't know what kind of family he has. I don't know what's going on, but he put all those people that work with him in jeopardy simply because he wasn't willing to apologize. What is the cost of an apology? We've all apologized. If you've been married for any period of time, you've apologized. Your kids have apologized. Or else. He wouldn't apologize.
Fascinated by a left-wing fanatic. And that can be said over and over again, and you can't get away from that. So the decision to suspend, and I suspect eventually cancel Kimmel, is a business decision by ABC. When FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr came out and made comments about that, all he was doing was underscoring that the FCC has to regulate in the public interest, and ABC licensees have to broadcast in the public interest. Public interest does not include telling lies about left-wing nuts. Now, I don't know that ABC would have lost their license, but I know that ABC was looking at their sponsors more than they were looking at Brendan Carr talking about the FCC's legal responsibility.
Almost half of...
That's the real importance here. That's when I'm trying to put it in perspective so you understand what really happened and why we can move on, because now I wanted you to know the truth, because I get people who text me all the time, and when they text me, they're like, Barry, you going to cover this? And I'm like, this is it. I'm done. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm done after this show.
ABC's affiliates were threatening to black out his show that night. Advertisers were burning up the phones. ABC executives were getting flooded with emails. Disney boss Bob Iger wanted Kimmel to apologize, but Kimmel said, "No way, Bob."
Jimmy wanted to go on his show last night, and in his monologue, I hear that he wanted to address the backlash from the right regarding his commentary about Charlie Kirk's charged killer. And I hear that that monologue was very hot. It very much took aim at MAGA, and that is when the executive said, we can't have him go on the air tonight.
From the last 50.
So just imagine, you are so filled with pride that you just laid your $1 million enterprise and said, F it. I'm not apprising to these scum MAGA. No way. Wouldn't do that. But you get what you get. I mean, it's pretty simple. Bob Iger, wash my hands of you. You're done. You're not that big of a deal here anymore, Jimmy. You don't got that kind of clout. The part that I found odd about that was that not only was he not going to apologize, he planned on going on the air that night and going even further. Like, you're going to apologize? No, I'm not apologizing. I'm going to whack these people. I'm coming harder. And Bob Iger said, you just don't have that kind of clout anymore, bro.
Years. Look at that. He should have been let go a long time ago. He assassinated his own numbers. The Disney stock price, that hasn't gone up in the last 4 years. This isn't about censorship. This is about math.